Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name's Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week we watched
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones is what we watched. So we watched, I know we're not doing a big four-parter. We watched the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was the debut for the franchise. And then we watched the what's the opposite of applause? It's not beleaguered. The much hated, I guess.
Hated.
The very despised reboot fourth installment of the
and
franchise.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Although there are levels to it that I absolutely, conceptually, I'm very on board. Because again, I'm big alien boy, love the stars, love the concept of like ethereal sci-fi in a conceptual like time placement. Although the whole 50s bullshit, like we need to calm down. Even though the other ones were the 30s, I get it, it's the time, but even still, it's a whole thing. But I love it. They go to Area 51 or Hangar 51 or whatever, and that's where the Ark is. I'm like, yes.
Oh my
okay.
god. Oh my god. I was like, this is where that like Area 51, they can't stop us all thing. Somebody fucking watched that and then was like, yeah, fuck yeah, they can't stop us all if we go over there. And then they made that stupid Facebook event. This is what caused that.
That's what's sparked. Oh, is this where we create the conspiracy that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull sparked a highly anticipated September 2019 breaking into Area 51 moment? Got it. Love. I love it. I truly, okay. I loved all of those silly memes, like the one where it's like the dad bringing his daughter outside and then like showing her like, you got a new car, but it's like a ghost from Halo. Incredible. So funny.
Yeah, so good. I watched all of these movies when I was a kid, or well, obviously not Crystal Skull because that came out like not too long ago, I guess. But
well,
like
12 years. 12 years ago.
Are you serious? Oh my god,
2008.
I'm old.
I thought it was like 6 years ago, but then I'm like, wait, timeline wise, that makes no sense. It was when I was in high school.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah.
So I watched all of the first three growing up, and the one that I loved the most because it was always on TV was Last Crusade, and that's the one people are like, no, it's all about Temple of Doom, blah 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 blah. But I still stand that that's the best one. But I went to go see Crystal Skull in theaters at midnight on release day. Yeah, and I was like stoked. I had like me and my friends were there, and like we all watched it, and we were all like, before the movie there was like a lot of anticipation and excitement and like cheering, like fuck yeah, we're here. And then at the end, like towards like you know at a midnight movie, it's like usually like screaming and excitement and like and like it's fun because you like you know gasp with everybody and you do the. But there was like after about 10 minutes it was gone. Like there was none of that, and it was just fucking quiet, which was weird for a packed ass theater. But somebody stood up as the credits started to roll and just kind of like shouted like, Lucas, the last 8 movies. Fuck it, let's get drunk. And like just walked out of the theater. And I will never forget that because that just kind of sums up Crystal Skull for me. I don't know. Conceptually, like you, I fucking love aliens. I'm super on board. I'm like a sci-fi queen over here. But this was just done bad. And we'll get into why.
Yeah.
But fuck, I have a lot to say about the first movie. Fucking
Same.
Half of my notes are all on this one thing, and I'm very fucking mad after watching. And I'm glad that we did these two because they both, they kind of like continue the story of Indian Marion, who is most of my notes. So.
Yeah. It's a lot. Indiana Jones is supposed to be like this kind of like schluffy. I know the character is very much Han Solo. I mean, that's kind of Harrison Ford's thing. He's like very good, but also doesn't care. You know?
Wait, is
like
he good though? He isn't good though.
But that's supposed to be the character. It's like he's supposed to be very like charismatic and charming, but also like so laid back that like nothing bothers him, but at the same time is like in the face of danger can do whatever.
I mean, sure, but does that make him good? What
no,
makes
no, I only meant good in terms of how oftentimes a hero in any story is presented as presumably good.
Yes.
Whereas, I mean, obviously getting into the generalities of what is ethically good and bad, I don't think there's anything good about Indiana Jones in that context. But I'm just saying in general, like, he's very much doing that character, but with a whip and a hat, which is fine. It's like, it is what it is. But I don't like it. Spoiler alert, I don't like Indiana Jones. I don't know. Like, I know a lot of people really resonate with the character. And by people, I mean cis white men.
Yes.
Really resonate with this idea of a not trying but succeeding kind of motif, because y'all only fail upward, and that's kind of the vibe in a white supremacist patriarchy. But he's so unlikable in every fucking way. Like, every aspect of him is bad.
I got like, okay, so yes, I agree. And I got vibes like, you know how when we did our Ghostbusters episode, we were talking about Bill Murray in that, and speaking of failing and all of that, right? So like, because I was also trying to think of like, who like fucking really stands Indiana Jones, and like as a character, like knowing like that is like critical of him and like looks at what he did. He's not a good dude. Like, he's a bad guy who is super big on objectification and God. Okay. Yeah. I think we need to get into this.
Yeah, because we're just going to roll right into what we have to say. Yeah. Okay. Let's jump into the first one.
Let's do it. Okay.
The year 1936. The man, hot guy, relics thief, and prototypical westernized colonizer Indiana Jones. The task: stop the Nazis from getting their hands on the Ark of the Covenant for fear of its power falling into the wrong hands. So instead, the power falls into Jones's hands and steals it for America, I guess, which is better for some reason. After being tasked with the responsibility, Jones journeys to Nepal to retrieve a talisman key from his former mentor, Abner Ravenwood. Oh no, Abner has died, but his daughter, Marion, who Jones coerced and had a non-consensual affair with at the age of 15, is very much alive and is, for some reason, now the main romantic interest of the movie. Cool.
They travel to Cairo with the talisman, only to be met with foil after foil, where, in true male gaze fashion, Marion is used as a trope as well as an actual object of distraction when Jones leaves her to be held against her will so she doesn't blow up his plan. Cool! Anyways, Jones finds the Ark, is caught by Nazis, gets away, is caught again, Nazis have the Ark, JK, the Ark's ghost power kills the Nazis, and Jones is heralded as a national hero, and paid handsomely. Also, snakes?
Also snakes. There were also snakes in this movie, which I have a lot to say about snakes and dicks. What up? Shout out. Not really, but kind of. I have some interesting takes, I think.
Okay, I also have interesting takes. Can we first talk about how... Okay, I was watching this movie, and I never thought about this, because like the way that it's presented is just very like a small line of dialogue to make sure that you know that Marion and Indy were like connected romantically at some point, right? Romantically. Yes. Ugh. And then like she was like, this many years ago, and I was like, wait, hold on. How old are they? And then like I went down this rabbit hole. I had to pause because it was really bothering me. I was like, how fucking old? What? And it turns out when they fucked, Marion was 15 and Indiana Jones was 27. And the whole time he's fucking brushing her off, right? He's like, you knew what you were doing. And she's like calling him out like, it was wrong and you knew it. And he's just like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And then like, he just like fucking brushes her off. And then he like is like, it didn't take much for me and your dad to stop being friends, only you. Meaning that Daddy Ravenwood found out about the sexual assault and was like, you fucked my daughter. My daughter is 15. Fuck you. And he was like, so he did the right thing and was like, stay the fuck out of my life and out of my, get the fuck away. And Indiana Jones later on is just like, it didn't take much, furthering the objectification of Marion in this whole fucking thing. Because Marion as a character, right? She's supposed to be, I was so fucking thrown watching her character because, like, when you first see her, you're like, oh, cool. Like, she can drink dudes under the table. Awesome. She can do this. She can do that. She seems very capable. And then the whole fucking time, they damsel her and make her instantly fall in love with Indy again. And just, she always had to be saved. And even when she was like, she actually got to fight for 2 seconds, like the weapons that she was given were like a fucking frying pan and a sheet, like a baking sheet, and like all these other like feminized objects, right? And it was so frustrating because she seemed like such a cool character, but none of that fit her. And like, from what I understand, Marion, or the actor that played Marion, her vision for her character was for her and Indy to go after the Ark as a team, because obviously, like, her dad, like, this was his life's work, was finding the Ark and trying to do this, right? So of course she's invested, and like, she cares about it because of her dad, which she doesn't care about it in this movie. But she wanted to go with Indy after it, like, together as a team. And Steven Spielberg was just very like, no, that's not how it's going to go. And they like kind of fought about it. And in the end, like, Steven Spielberg was just like, no, the Ark is Indy's thing. You're just there. Like, and then they also made these choices where like they wanted her to be in a dress and heels when she was down in the pit of souls. So the scene with the Frenchman, right? The French archaeologist, that was all ad-libbed. That was not in the script because they needed to figure out how to get her from her Egyptian garb to dress and heels. And so that's what they came up with because they decided that's what she needed to wear in the pit of souls. And I don't understand any of the choices that they made with her and this character, because she's a great actor. She clearly had a vision and was just like, Harrison Ford was allowed to make decisions about his character and to rewrite things and to like give himself a backstory. And she had a backstory. She had all this stuff. She was like, great, let's make this a fully rounded character. Let's make this, and they were just like, no, honey, you're just there. Yeah. You're there to be saved. You're there as the prize. You're there as this. And like, then like they made a fucking choice to make her 15 and to make it like in Indy's eyes to be like, yeah, whatever. You knew what you were doing. I'm sorry. I fucked people at 22 and didn't know what I was doing, Like, how the fuck, like, on
top of that, yes, 100%. Obviously 15 is like far too young, but to put that in a story where the hero is 27, at the time he fucked her. At the time, right? He fucked her. So it's very clear that there is it's like an obvious coercion. It's an obvious assault. And then for him to double down in the dialogue and saying, you know what you were doing. It was your choice to, like, really, you said earlier, you weren't sure why they did this in the movie, but I'm just like, I honestly know exactly why. It's men who don't see women as people. That's just end of story. It's like this idea that like Indy being this hero character and kind of being like, oh, well, you need to take responsibility. Also, you fucked her and she was 15 and you were 27. There's not really any going around that.
He's a predator.
Written into the script, you're trying to justify the actions of statutory rape. You're trying to justify these actions amongst the hero character, which is also just like, why? What? Like, okay, why is that the narrative device used to imbue her with this history? Like, you could have written any other history.
But this is the one that they chose.
This is the one they chose.
And it was almost even worse because George Lucas wanted to make her 11 when Indiana Jones forced himself. He wanted Indiana Jones, a 27-year-old man, to force himself onto an 11-year-old woman or an 11-year-old girl, right? And I'm just like, why? And then his boy Steven Spielberg was like, oh, no. We'll make, like, you're gross. Why would you do that? We got to make her 15. 15 is an okay age if this is what you're going for. What the fuck? Like,
yeah.
And like, that was just such a fucking gross choice to me to even have that in there. Cause already, like, those two were already connected through his mentor, through all of this, right?
Yeah.
Like through all of that stuff. That part didn't need to be there. And it's just infuriating.
Yeah, it's infuriating. It's also gross. I mean, not that I had any sort of history with this movie to begin with, but it just continues to recontextualize my faith in people. Only because this franchise is allotted as one of the great franchises of cinematic history, especially with somebody like Spielberg. I know that these movies are praised in such a way. I mean, granted, visually it was well shot. It was well done. Like, obviously Spielberg visually is great. Like, he's fantastic. I think that's relatively inarguable. When it comes to content and what it means to tell a story, it seems very clear where a lot of these people lie in terms of their own personal ethos and their ethical compass. Like, the way they view other people, and in this case, the way they view women. Like, not only was it acceptable for him to have sex with a 15-year-old, and that was the choice because it was, big air quotes, sexy and interesting, but she is now the romantic lead, and that's how you introduce a romantic lead. And saying romantic lead is giving the movie too much credit. She was not a lead. She was a prop. She was a suitcase for Indiana Jones. He took her around and placed her wherever he needed her, and then left her there until it was convenient for him to open the suitcase, essentially. Like, she was not a character. She was a prop the whole time. And so in the movie,
artifacts that he was going after were more important to him than she was.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I want to get more into, like, the concept of, like, westernized archaeology and what it means to, like, I mean, well, yeah. So sticking with her.
We'll go off about that in a minute.
Sticking with her for a moment. I mean, anytime she was, like, in danger, the first thing he worried about when she got back was, who gave you that dress? Why do you look like that? Why are you wearing this thing? Were you with a boy? Were you with a guy? Like, that's the implication, not like, hey, you know how you almost just died? How are you feeling about that? Like, I'm happy you're back. It's, did you fuck that person? Is, like, the first thing. Which is, again, more of that toxic masculine ownership bullshit, which is is obviously disgusting. Like, I feel like I say that, but, like, there's not really a follow-up. It's just fucking knock it out. Like, take that shit out of your shit.
And that shit is so dumb too, because, like, later on, like, so she's kidnapped, she's taken her, like, she goes through so much, and then, like, he has a boo-boo on his chest, and she goes to clean it, and he's like, oh, I'm a sab. You need, it doesn't hurt here. You gotta kiss me here. No, you got, and he turns into a fucking baby. And I'm like, this is fucking gross. And we're supposed to forgive and forget Indy and all that he's done because he quote unquote saved her. But he doesn't really go out of his way to save her. It's just a byproduct of what happens, like, in his quest to get whatever sort of treasure that he gets, you know? And the only reason she survives is because she's resourceful or, you know, like, somebody else helps her. But, like, she's also, like, from her introduction, just, like, the way that she carries herself and everything, she's so much more capable, and I fucking hate that they didn't allow her to be that in this movie, because really it was men not allowing her to be, like, the character that she was created to be, right? They were like, no, you're just there. We're gonna put you in a dress. This is fine, you know? And then it's like, oh, her and Indy are holding hands. What? And then, like, it's like, oh, it's a date. And it's like, fuck you. Like, I all of my notes are, like, about him and her are in all caps. And it's just me yelling into the void of Google Docs at how pissed I am and how gross this is.
Well, it's every inch of exemplifying that women aren't people. Women are objects. Women are objects for romance and sex when convenient. So sex when it's inconvenient, no thank you. Romance when it's inconvenient, no thank you. I, the cis male, have to be in the mood for you to be of use to me. Otherwise, you can stay here staying kidnapped. Like, if I let you go, it's a big red flag and then I can get in trouble. So you need to risk your life here because your life isn't really a life. You just, you're just here. So you stay here so my cover doesn't get blown so I can be rich and famous. How's that sound?
And also, those beats are supposed to be comical. They're there for comedic relief.
Yeah.
Not because it's not framing Indy in a way it's like, oh, what an asshole. It's there so she's screaming at him while he leaves her and he's like, no, it's fine, whatever, because that's just who this character is. But again, going back to how many male characters who are supposed to be protagonists have we covered that have this same thing where it's just like, oh, well, it's funny because he left the girl because she's crying, she needs his help, and he's just like, yeah, whatever.
Well, that's the thing that I was trying to say earlier about the hero who kind of doesn't care, who's kind of just whatever. So to us, that's supposed to be he's charming because he's a little bad. He just does he's just kind of a man's man who does a little bad stuff and is kind of dumb, who makes bad decisions sometimes. But
it works out.
But it works out for him. It works out for him, so everything's okay. But not. I mean, again, he's the hero, so that's the story we're following. But we're not seeing. I mean, we are seeing how he's treating those around him. But I mean, I have more to say about the after effects or the aftermath of the next movie, how much toxic destruction is left in the wake of this adventurer for the sake of adventure, for the sake of it, and that's, oh my God, dipping into the whole concept of archaeology and rummaging through cultures for the sake of history, the West fucking lives for this shit. They love stealing from other cultures and from other lands, invading, killing, thieving the history just to put it in a little box so white people can go look at it and be like, how interesting. You know what I mean? For the sake of history. Who's history?
Well, and also for glory too.
For glory too, and money.
They don't even take a full archaeological team to it's always done for personal gain. And he destroys a whole fucking temple and a whole culture while he's trying to get this fucking idol, right? And so I'm this is supposed to be the person. This is supposed to be the good guy. We're supposed to be rooting for this guy, but he's destroying everything for this one little artifact. That doesn't make sense. And the way that they portray the indigenous people of these areas too really fucking bother me. It's because they're it's the white man comes in and knows more about the culture and how to get across these booby traps than the indigenous people that live there, that that this is their culture. And then he they're framed as cowards too. They're oh no, we're not going to go in there. And depicted as untrustworthy, where it's oh, here, give me this and then I'll help you across, and then he fucking leaves, right? Just it's putting them down in a way that is just, well, it's the worst.
It's reinstilling this concept that is so prevalent. And I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the crux of the movie. Generally, it's the concept that the West is the best. I don't know how many times that could have been thrown in my face in this movie by not only by making most of these indigenous folks either cowardly, deceptive, or doing the very basic, bold, racist savagery tactic of making them almost inhuman in their portrayal. You're reiterating this concept that the West, where our hero is from, this American or this Western white cis person, is the one who can come in and save the day. It's white savior complex ad hominem. Mm-hmm. It's reiterating the concept of Western expansion and justifying colonialism in this really, really ineloquent way, right? And
it's institutionalized too. It is
it's a part
systemically. There's a line where the museum guy that's trying to get Jones to go off and get the thing again. He says the museum buys pieces with no questions asked, because they don't want to know. They don't want to know what was destroyed or what happened or what they had to do to get this, because it's more important that they have this,
They want it,
and then
yeah.
Indiana Jones gets the glory for getting the thing.
And at the end of the day, if we're looking at specific, and I mean this extends past fictional narrative, this extends into just generalized American or Western society. It's the concept of then taking that thing that you stole, putting it on display for the sake of capitalism under the guise of history. So people are paying admission oftentimes to these museums, so they're profiting off of this thing that was stolen under the guise of history and education, which is like, no, you killed people and stole their shit, and now you're making other people pay to look at that stolen shit. Like, that's just the whole thing.
It's very gross.
It's
and
gross.
I hate
and
that.
Like, that's the whole point of the movie. That's like the whole concept. And we're supposed to be like, yay. But I mean, it goes back to again, it's more of this American shit where it's like everything that is not white or Western is to be exoticized. If it's unfamiliar to a Western audience, it is free open territory to big air quotes explore. And by big air quotes explore, I mean, take whatever you want, kill whoever you want. There are no rules, no laws. Just do it. You're white. Go for it. Who cares?
And in order to reinforce
and it's
that,
adventurous.
In order to reinforce that, they had to make the bad guys Nazis, right? Because everybody hates Nazis. So
Everyone hates Nazis.
We're the good guys, right? Because we're not Nazis, because we're not doing this. So it felt like obviously in all of these films, like the real bad guy is socialist, right? So it's cool. Let's fucking talk about this. But
in the next one, who's the bad guys? Commies. Which is like, really? This is the most boring tactic of narrative evil.
And it's like the thing that they're trying to those people that are like, oh, well, I'm not racist. Oh, well, I'm not this, right? So it's like the most boring, silly, stupid tactic to put in there to be like, Indy's a good guy because he's not a Nazi. They're doing the same things and trying to take get the same treasures literally and get all of this. But Indy's the good guy because he's not a Nazi.
Yeah.
When he literally he exploits the locals too, and their labor and their knowledge and all of this, right? In the same exact ways. And then we see these chase scenes where he's flipping people's baskets and throwing their shit against the walls and everything. And then he is literally just throws money in their faces, whatever. And
he's an American.
That's supposed to be he's not a Nazi, so he's okay. What the fuck?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to even further that, there are two moments in that specific sequence or that act where they're in that town that I really want to jump into. The first is this fun thing. It's a big cinematic moment. It was one of those aha, yay, Indiana, go off. We love you. Kill the brown person. Hooray. When they're in the general square and there's a crowd of people, he's looking around. They've crowded around him. And then the guy with the huge sword comes out, and it's this is going to be an epic battle. Oh, they're setting it up. He pulls out his gun, shoots him, and says, "I don't have time for this." So it's reinstilling this concept of that's supposed to be a fun, heroic, comedic moment, right? I don't have time for this. So first of all, you're the foreigner here. You are ruining this town in every sense of the word, knocking people over, damaging goods, possibly killing people. This guy is protecting his family and people, his space, and you just shoot him dead for the sake of time. They're not people to you. And it's reinstilling that West is the best. The weapons themselves, the gun versus the sword. It's we are at the peak of innovation, therefore anything below us is a waste of time. And in this instance, your culture and your people they're a waste of time to me. And this is so emblematic narratively, where they put these literal two weapons up against one another, and then our hero character is saying that I don't have time for this and shoots the guy dead. What does that fucking mean apart from this generally very overtly racist and xenophobic concept of Western superiority and specifically white supremacist superiority? Or just white supremacy, rather. That was redundant. But you know what I mean? This is a moment that is so eloquently laid out for the sake of comedy, but in fact, it's just this xenophobic piece of shit. It means exactly what it says. There is no underlying subtext. There's nothing besides the fact that Indiana Jones embodies everything that America stands for. And a lot of people cheer that and applaud that. And they're very excited about that. It makes them so giddy and so happy to see their American hero really, really showing the bad guy. Bad guy being anybody who's not white, right? It's just fucking toxic. And then after that, I hated that they made Marion also kind of a piece of shit. Like, the only thing they're going to give her in any capacity is her saying, like, when she's put in the basket, she's being kidnapped essentially, and he's trying to find her and causing all this distraction for the sake of her safety, which is like, no, you put her in danger. You're the fucking problem. Like, fuck you, Indiana Jones. But she says, she's screaming in the basket, you can't do this to me. I'm an American.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which is so indicative of exactly what this movie's trying to say. I mean, like, you're
not above the law. You're not above, like, your actions.
That's the thing, though, is like, there's a level of it this is so overt. I don't think this is trying to be intentionally subversive. Like, all of these elements seem so, like, surface level text. They seem so overt, so casually specific, that it's hard for me to not at least think that maybe that the narrative is relatively subversive in painting the American colonizer and the American Westerner as this villain, only to be outdone on the villainy scale by literal Nazis. But at the same time, that's not the truth. As much as I want that to be true, I don't think that's true. I think we're supposed to cheer on Indiana Jones and all of these elements. We're supposed to see him, big air quotes, succeed in all of these big air quotes challenges, because it's not succeeding and it's not challenging. He is killing people for the sake of capitalism. He's killing people for the sake of ego. He's destroying colonies because they aren't people to him. They are objects, in the same way that we clearly see that women, even Western white women, are simply objects because they're not white cis men in a Western society. Because again, that's the story we're telling, like every fucking story for the most part. But
they also still put themselves above, like, you know, everybody else, exactly like like white men. You know? So it's just like,
it's just it's like this is applauded as like one of the great movies of American cinematography, kind of, right? Or like, to some degree. I mean, obviously Spielberg is lauded as one of the big names of American cinema. But, like, this is the kind of shit that's getting turned out. Like, it's cool. If you know, like, there's an element of storytelling that is more than the text, that's more than the narrative, that's more than these elements, that's more than all of that. And I understand that in cinema as an art. But if these are the movies that are being shot, not even talking about the strategy of shooting the thing, but if these are the stories that are telling, what the fuck? Like, it's so boring, it's so tiring, it's exhausting, and it just pats itself on the back for being shitty. Yeah. Like, look at us. At least we're not whatever. And oh my God, I feel that way times 10 in the next one for a very specific line that just, I'm so excited to get there. It's probably the first thing I'm going to talk about right off the bat, because I am on this little roll and it's fucking whack. It's like justifying all of the murder and all of the shit that he's ever done by oh my God. It's just, such a bad line. And I'm like, this is 2008. You guys still suck. Like, you're writing for general audiences. I get it. And I know that a lot of people are ignorant and very silly and very, very racist. I know that. But why not, if you're so fucking smart, why not write a story that is thought-provoking in a way that acknowledges privilege, that acknowledges white supremacy as not only a state of being, but an institutionalized tool that is taught and given to the American people? Like, why not bring all of these little, like, it's because it's totally possible. There are so many great movies that are having these conversations, some of which are done by white people, not to like, yay, white people, but like, because fuck them, like, in general, the concept. But you know what I'm saying? Like, that was 2008. Come on. I know that's still 12 years ago, but it's calling into question just the entire concept of like, who are these people and why are they telling stories?
It's like Star Wars Episode 1 all over again. That's kind of how I feel about Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we love those. Let's give them more money and then let them do whatever they want.
Yeah, let's make them write an even fucking wilder story. Like, just let's let them go canonically all the way off. Like, why not?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Oh, there's also a level of like the scene when he shows up and she's like, I was 15. I was that whole at the bar where she's like drinking these locals under the table, and she's working, and there is kind of this element in her dialogue where it sounds like she's just biding her time, and this place doesn't really exist to her. This isn't real. This is just a playground to escape. And it's kind of like reinstilling the concept of like these foreign lands, and I use that very specifically, these foreign lands conglomerately exoticizing them as a foreign place of playtime. Their culture isn't real, the people aren't real, and the landscape is not real because it's not America. It's not what we can categorize as powerful, therefore it doesn't exist. And even in some of her text, it was the implication was she was biding her time until something else happened.
The vibe I got, like, yes, you're absolutely correct about all of that. I got that she just she's using it as an escape from her life.
Yeah.
But she can't because because Indiana Jones ruins not only beautiful temples and landscapes and he ruins like everybody's life. And that is like even more so in the next one. Everything that he touches and everything that he does and everything that he sees and everything that he stands for, he ruins all of it. And in fact, he doesn't even stand for anything because he's just a fucking opportunist that like literally is doing whatever he has to do to save his own skin. And there's no fucking character growth for him, even like not just in this movie, but in any of the franchise. Like, he's just the same fucking person. You know what happens? You know how he grows? He grows old. That's what it is. He just gets old. The next movie is a boomer movie. But
yeah, with every ounce of truth. Yes, absolutely.
But like, that's what he does. And then because Spielberg and Lucas they wrote Indiana Jones to be the hero, to be somebody that every man can see himself in, to be the badass, to be like, you know, the role model, and then this and then that. But like, I think the biggest issue about this, other than, you know, colonialization and all of that other bullshit, but the portrait of masculinity, they themselves have decided this is what a man is, and this is what a man's man is, and this is who we should be aspiring to be or to be like. And then to push that on to, you know, so like we were talking about, like, Indiana Jones is just such a cultural icon and like this just giant piece that it's like kind of impossible to like not see it, and kind of like if anybody says Indiana Jones, everybody's like, fuck yeah, you know, like without like ever having like really looked at what does this character stand for, because literally he just destroys everything in his path. He destroys his family. He destroys the people that he loves. I didn't say this earlier, but I need to fucking rant about this. The only woman that we saw before Marion, who Marion doesn't even come into the film until 24 minutes in, is we see this woman that is his student at his class, right? And she's just like, all of the women in this class are looking at Indy like they just want to jump on his dick right now, right? And it's incredibly uncomfortable. And it's not even just one person. It's like all of the women in the class, because again, thinking of what Spielberg and Lucas want and what they want to be wanted by all of these women. They want to be dangerous and kind of like not really give a shit, you know? And so you see this woman just kind of like look at Indy with like, you know, these big giant bedroom eyes, and then she like closes her eyelids and it says, what does it say? Like,
love you.
Yeah.
Love you.
And like, that's just kind of like a small side introduction to like how you as a woman are supposed to think about and respond to this character. And as a man, how this character is perceived. And if you act like this, you are going to get all the ladies. And I really hate that this is the portrait of masculinity, because it's not just even in this movie, but it's in so much of this era of Hollywood and before, and just Hollywood in general. But like, this is such a tired trope, and I fucking hate this portrait of masculinity, and I really, 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 really hate Indiana Jones.
Same. I mean, furthering, you just talked about masculinity as like this portrayal of what is good and acceptable amongst those who are masculine in this way. Going even back to that Singali bar, those people in the bar, it's like the biggest, like meanest, most masculine presenting person who's sitting at the other table, and they're doing a drinking game, and she beats him. So there's like a funny haha, like, oh wow, this girl beat you. But if you look at the concept of drinking games, that's a very masculine thing. It's a masculine idea. So even in this culture, somebody who is femme is, big air quotes, more masculine than the most masculine of their culture, therefore feminizing, degrading, and dehumanizing the entirety of their culture for the sake of a fucking joke, because it's funny. Because it's funny that she's a little girl and she drank the big boy under the table. But really what they're structurally trying to say with this entire thing that we've talked about, and the sort of erasure of culture, the erasure of entire populations of people within this narrative, this scene is really fucking trying to show, like, in a very disgusting bigendered male masculine, female feminine type way, that like it's doing that thing that Western ideology, the West and white cis hetero systemic, like that patriarchy, what it does to so many cultures, which is feminizes the entirety of it. Because being femme is what? Bad. Being femme in any capacity is bad, because women aren't people, and feminist is bad, and masculinity is good, and blah, blah, blah. In this really gross, bigendered, expected way, this scene does that in such a toxic and, I mean, I don't even want to say subtle, because I feel like that's giving them credit for like sliding in there. It's very overt. It's very clear what this thing's doing. And that trope in movies in general does it every time. That's not an original idea. That's like,
she's,
you know what I mean?
Dude. She's like, she can hang. She can do all of this, right? And like, I fucking hate, because like 9 times out of 10 when they do that to women, you know, and they kind of like make them like a little bit tomboyish, right? Like that's supposed to be sexy and that's supposed to be this and everything, right? When cool, like if you want to do that, live your life. But like, I mean, like the way that it's presented in some of these is it's supposed to be, it's for the male gaze 100%, right? It's not for her. And then to present her as strong and independent and all of this, but then for the rest of the movie to make her like, she is kidnapped so many times and left, and she cries and asks for help and then gets rescued and then gets captured and then cries and then gets the help. And then like she, even as a strong, independent woman, constantly has to be saved and protected, and to anybody that, and she's willing to give herself freely to any man that is going to offer that sort of protection, which to me felt a little bit primal. You know, these people protect me, so great, here is your reward. I am your reward, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so she was doing that to herself, and trying to like analyze this a little bit more, because she was a victim of sexual assault, right? Like, I think part of that is because of, you know, what Indy did to her, and because, like, you know, she obviously hasn't gone to therapy and talked about it or, you know, anything. Yeah. And they were trying to make her be a strong woman, but she was just as damseled as the woman in the second movie, who like literally like just cries and screams. What's her name from Temple of Doom? I forget, but like the whole time she's just nagging and complaining, and she's basically that same character.
It's the concept of autonomy and feminism that these very sexist men consider to be good enough for the character. Like, there are levels of it where it's like, oh, well, she's autonomous because she's getting something that she's asking. Like, she wants certain things, so she's getting it. But at the same time, like, no, you're writing a character that is so completely... Again, you're writing a character that's not a person. This is just a prop for him. That's it.
And how I also fucking hate and don't understand how in such a short time she went from being completely traumatized by Indy to then just like holding his hand and wanting to fuck him and wanting to do all of the things because his actions don't matter, right? You know, she still thinks he's hot. And I felt like that was just such a fucking bad and gross choice. Like everything about like these two characters, the whole fucking story was a bad fucking choice. And I hate it.
Yeah. Everything in this movie for the most part was garbage. I do want to get into how this movie is homophobic. I'm really excited about this one. So very clearly, I mean, there's a general, obviously, like people hate queerness, people hate gay people, like, you know what I mean? Like that's in the zeitgeist, especially for this time, like gay people were disgusting, trans people didn't exist, right? Like that's the idea, like for that time period. In this movie, first scene, we see Indiana Jones going to steal the idol, and by his side is one of these local people who's helping him, right? They get the idol, it's the whole thing, they're helping each other through. When they're flying over the pit with his whip, I forget who goes first. Either way, one of them's on the other side of the pit, the other one nearly falls, and then stumbles into the other. And the local like embraces him to like catch him, and they're doing like a full hug that seems kind of intimate. Indiana Jones recognizes that intimacy and is like disgusted by it and like pushes his body away because it's like, you saved my life, but we can't be intimate because we're men, because gay people are disgusting. Get your male hands off of me. I'm not gay. Like it's very like, I'm going to use inflammatory language here, and sorry. It's very, I'm not a fag, get the fuck off of me moment. Like just off the bat, that's the body language. That's what's being shown to us in an audience. And I mean, it's those kind of gags that are very clearly like, I mean, it's obviously homophobic, but like as a young gay person seeing something like that, it's a reminder that like, oh yeah, I am gross and disgusting and not worth it. Like I don't exist. I shouldn't exist. That's right. Like I'm not wanted and I shouldn't be here, sort of a thing. It just reinstills that thing for the sake of a joke, right? Like, oh, haha, it's like, oh, you're gross boys. But like, so at its best, it's trying to get a cheap laugh at the sake of an entire group of people. At its worst, it's cause for somebody's disappearance, right? Like it's, there are so many levels to it that are just like, it's gross and toxic and like whatever. And then what is his biggest fear? Snakes. His biggest fear is snakes. I don't know if this is a stretch. Hear me out. His biggest fear is snakes. He can't.
I'm here.
He can't even like he can't be near them. He can't think about them. They look like wieners. Just it. He is so anti-gay that he can't, like, his biggest fear is snakes. I mean, obviously people have a fear of snakes. It has nothing to do with dicks or phallic or whatever. But I'm going to pull something from the new one just for a moment. Remember how they're like in the new one, they get in the quicksand. That's not quicksand. They're in the pit. And the only thing to get them out is Shia throws the snake and he's like, I'm not touching that. He's like, just grab it or you're else you're going to die. He's like, say it's not a snake. It's like, okay, it's not a snake. It's a stick. He's like, ugh, and that's the only thing he can't even imagine being around anything that's phallic. They also do, and I'll say this later, they do another one of those little moments. Cause remember when they're on the rocket car in the new one and they go at the end and then the KGB guy is like passed out on his shoulder. He looks over and he's like, ugh, and like throws him. Cause again, it's another male intimate moment that he cannot stomach. The idea of man-on-man contact that isn't violent is disgusting to him. Right.
I hate that.
Yeah. And it just reinstills this very heteronormative binary expectation of people. Like it's obviously homophobic. It's obviously trash. I don't know if the snakes thing is a reach, but like, I'm going to say it's true because fuck Indiana Jones and fuck all of his stupid, shitty bullshit because he's a fucking trash can. And I hate him. I hate him so much. I just hate everything he stands for. Every instance of him existing in these fake stories is so bad. Like it's not just bad. I think it's harmful. It's harmful.
Think it's like, especially like when we have a whole society that looks up to this dude as like one of their heroes and shit like that. Like without like, you know, we've gotten into this habit, and maybe we've always been there. I don't know. I'm not 100 years old or whatever, but where we're not critical of our heroes, and you know, like you can. What about Indiana Jones is it that people like? You know, like, is it the adventure thing? Cool. I like adventure. Like, name what you actually like about Indiana Jones. Like, really think about it, and don't just be like, oh, well, he does a thing, and then, you know, like cool. He does a cool whip thing. That's tight. Like, I can get behind that. But like him as a person and his personality and everything for that, and that West is the best kind of mentality that he just fucking oozes everywhere throughout this franchise. It's so harmful, and I don't know how to say it anyway. It's just
I was just gonna throw in he's also a Republican.
Okay, yeah, he for sure is, right?
Because in the next one he straight up says it. He obviously says it as like a derogatory thing for the KGB when he says I like Ike, but like, I mean,
oh my God,
that was
right?
a whole communist Red Scare bullshit with Eisenhower and like that, the slogan. But it's like, oh, cool. So he is a Republican. He's a conservative. Got it. Understood. Okay.
I mean, we all fucking knew
we
that.
We knew.
So
we know.
We fucking
know.
That. But like, I can think of like so many like so many men that I know that are like, I fucking love this movie. I love this, blah, blah, blah. And then like, I think about who they are as a person, and I reflect on some of their actions. Like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
Bye.
100%. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are assholes because of Indiana Jones.
Yeah. I mean, again, when some of the biggest cinematic heroes of the history of cinema, essentially, some of the biggest heroes are people like this. It's very clear why
the world is the way it is.
Well, why a lot of the Western world, why a lot of Americans are the way they are. Like, yes. Or like male America. Like, everything is important. And like, people learn from media oftentimes, whether it's a movie, whether it's a documentary, whether it's a short story, whether it's a written word, whatever it is, you're absorbing information, you're internalizing it or processing it or thinking about it or not thinking about it. Either way, it's happening. Everything fucking counts when it comes to what you intend to do. And if the intended outcome for this movie was a success, fuck everybody who made this movie.
If the intent was to glorify and normalize this type of behavior and reinforce that, I think it was. Whatever. Fuck this movie.
Yeah. Are you ready to talk about an equally bad
oh my God, are you ready
sequel?
To burn this one?
Yeah, let's
ready.
burn it down.
The year 1957. The man, still Indiana Jones. The task, stop the KGB from finding the lost city of gold and, subsequently, the crystal skull, which holds all the knowledge of the universe by getting to it before they do, I think. After evading the KGB by way of a refrigerator and the nuclear testing site, Jones meets a young man named Mutt, who informs Jones that Harold Oxley is in trouble and may hold the key to locating the lost city. They set out in search of Oxley and find the prized crystal skull in a Peruvian graveyard that they are definitely not stealing from. They're captured by Soviets who take them to a camp in the Amazon jungle where they find Oxley as well as Marion Ravenwood, who happens to be Mutt's mom. Also, Jones's ex-lover. Jones is Mutt's dad. What up?
Wow. Oh my God. Breaking news. After a series of sword fights, killer ants, and some slapstick-style violence, they end up at the entrance of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, to which the group says, let's invade and get the entire remaining native population killed. In the giant pyramid that sits at the center of the kingdom, they find a treasure room with artifacts from many ancient civilizations. The aliens were archaeologists. Cool. Oh, then here's an alien throne room that turns out to be, you guessed it, a UFO. The ship flies away, destroying any last remnants or traceable evidence just as they narrowly escape the ship taking off. Mutt has daddy issues. Jones and Marion get married and all is right with the world, except every place Jones has ever been because he forged, destroyed, and inadvertently killed most of its inhabitants. Hooray, Indiana Jones!
And also snakes, probably, somewhere.
Also snakes. Yeah, also his internalized homophobia.
That like he used like to pull him out of the thing. That thing would have been torn the fuck in half with the force that was holding Jones in and Marion in that like not quicksand thing, whatever. But like that snake, one, would not have allowed that to happen, and two, would have absolutely been ripped in half.
Yeah, I mean, apart from all of the other things that are wrong with this movie, none of the physics make sense, obviously, because it is a cartoon, right?
I mean, the sword fight on top of the...
I loved it. I loved it. I fucking... Yes. Give me a perfectly...
And then everything has to hit Shia LaBeouf in the balls, right? Like, that is oh my God, that is just so funny. I just like, whenever somebody gets hit there, like, I just can't stop laughing.
Boy humor.
Oh my God, you guys.
Boy humor.
Oh my God, it hurts, doesn't it? Okay.
Also, this is something that bothered me, but like, obviously it doesn't even matter. But like the whole concept of them in the fucking warehouse, he throws the gunpowder in the air and he's like, "Oh my God," because it's so magnetic. Like, and then they get there.
That's not how magnets work.
No, it's not. But it's so strong. Hey, shout out. And then they get there, and then he throws the shotgun pellets, and then they roll and stick to it. It's like, yes, but as soon as they get the big super mega magnet box out of the crate, these men are bent down near it with all of their metal guns and not reacting to it. And I'm like, wait, is this thing magnetized or is it not, Queens? Like, that's an easy fix. That's like okay, that is a step one. That's a day one catch. Like, that's a day one. Nobody on set was like, wait, aren't their guns metal? Big question. You know what I mean?
That's the whole point. Metal? Like, wait, hold on. How did they get the crowbars off? Oh, look, it's strong enough to, like, a mile of warehouse to attract the gunpowder, right? But it's not strong enough to, when it's fucking right next to it, pull a gun off of, like, this dude. What the fuck?
And these incongruous physics are, like, the least of this fucking movie's worries. That was silly and fun, and a fun little mistake. The rest, well, I don't know. I don't know about this. I don't know about this movie, Jess. I don't know about this.
Can you tell everybody what you told me when we decided that we were going to do this movie? How much you loved this when you first saw it?
Oh, well, when I first saw it, I was like, hell yeah. Because I also had no history with Indiana Jones at the time. And after that, I watched Raiders. But I was also so completely not, like, critical of shit. I just, like, kind of watched it absentmindedly and was like, ooh, fight. Yeah. Like, oh, aliens. And ooh, yeah. Foreign land of people who don't matter. I love digesting this fun, yummy Western culture. Nom, 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 nom. That was me doing all that. And then add aliens on top of that. I'm like, fucking sign me the fuck up. And they're in a graveyard. Ooh. Just like,
I was stoked for aliens. Yes. I was like, all right, cool.
I still am. Arguably, I'm still stoked for aliens.
Dude, all right. The fucking aliens, like, weren't actually bad, and they were like, cool, come to another dimension with us. But like, that was like, no, we can't leave our world that we love and blah 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 blah, we can't expand knowledge. And then they're just like, all right, cool, whatever, bye. And they like don't give a fuck about them at all. But okay, so what I didn't like about the aliens was, so the aliens were archaeologists, right? So it's like providing more like self-justification for like, you know, Indy and all of them, right? Which, okay, that's boring. But I didn't like that they were the ones that came down. Like, Ancient Aliens, yes, I love that show. Fucking go off, right? But in this, it felt like another point of erasure for indigenous people. Because like now all of their inventions and all of the things that they created and everything were not done out of their own creativity and ingenuity, but by these aliens. So I was like, cool, well, that's another form of erasure. Awesome.
I mean, it's also why the show Ancient Aliens in its entirety is racist. I mean, because it's never the culture that could have potentially had the capabilities, because they're not white, they're not smart. What are we talking about? It's always had to have been aliens. Couldn't have been people. They're not smart. That culture, they were dumb. They're not smart enough to do this. It was aliens. Like, I mean, the show's fucking racist. Like, I mean, granted, trash TV. It's a trash show. It's a bad show. But I also love aliens. So, no, I wanna really just get back, because this was the thing that made me so fucking mad when they're in that room and he's like, Sumerian cultural statues, Aztec necklaces, like, ooh, look at all these cultures that like have come here. And then he's like stops and realizes it, and it's like this big like light bulb moment. These aliens are archaeologists. And in that moment, they have justified all of the pillaging, murder, toxic, everything that has happened thus far that he has done wrong. They've essentially said with this line and with this scenario, you're good, Indy. You did it for the greater good. Because they're the smartest, most intelligent beings. They know all. They're just like you. So all of your actions of misgivings and misdeeds and literal trash that you've done throughout the entirety of your life, you're justified. Don't change a thing, sweetie. Like, just little kiss on the forehead. What a fucking piece of shit that choice was. What an absolute fucking travesty of a choice that fucking thing is. Can you even believe that? Okay, and then okay, hold on. Whew, let me center myself real quick. Because at the beginning, I was excited on rewatch because I was like, oh, this is silly. Physics don't work great. But when they're driving out of that warehouse after Jones was double crossed, he's in the car. Cool fight scene. Love it. He drives through a stack of boxes. One of those boxes is the box with the Lost Ark. Mm-hmm. You see it. It's displayed. And visually, we are being told now that this story doesn't give a shit about the Ark. It doesn't give a shit about that old story. Like in this way that like it felt very much like a directorial, oh, you like this thing that you herald as such a pinnacle of cinematic innovation, this thing of peak storytelling for American cinema. I don't give a shit. I'm going to do my own thing. And as soon as that happened, I was like, yes, let's go. Like Spielberg, you just told me with what you showed me that you don't care about that first thing. You just ran it over with a fucking car.
Was that like, were you hoping that was going to be the Luke throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder and being like, fucking cool, let's go. Which
I love. Like disregard. Yeah. Like learn from it. Grow, like do a new thing. It's like, don't be beholden to whatever it was just because the fandom. Fuck the fandom. Fuck the fans. Who cares? Do your own thing. I'm on board. That movie is a toxic piece of shit. Throw it out the window. And I thought that this was going to be an acknowledgement of, yeah, that thing kind of sucks. Let me do something that's of the same world, but better. And I was so excited. And then he let me down.
Instead of making it better, he made it boomer.
He made it boomer. Arguably worse. Do you want to talk about the fridge moment that everyone hates?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I?
Sure.
Can I say something though? Do you know that was supposed to be Back to the Future?
Wait, what?
The fridge, that whole that sequence, that was written into one of the first drafts of the Zemeckis directed Back to the Future, the first one. It was produced by Spielberg, and that idea was supposed to be Doc Brown getting into the fucking fridge. That was a whole thing. I don't even think they shot it. I think it was just conceptually like it was something that was on the table. They were going to do it, and then they took it away last minute. This was like before. So the concept of like people being mad that like this series jumped the shark. I'm like, Queens, this shit was an idea before the first Back to the Future. like it's not they ran out of ideas. This is like a gem idea that they saved from beforehand. So then when Spielberg's directing, he took that idea because it was his and wanted to throw it in here and finally use it. It's the same sequence, same concept, same idea. He finally got to use it. But like, I think that was one thing that I remember when the movie came out is like, so people were so upset about that scene because they were like, this movie, what was it like? Bombed the fridge became the new jumped the shark conceptually, right?
Yeah.
So I just love it how wrong that idea is because it's like, no, it's a very old idea. It was supposed to be Back to the Future, y'all. But I mean, that's not to say that it wasn't silly and generally. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to say it. I love that sequence. I loved it. It was so silly and exactly what I was hoping that some silly movie like this would be. It's like, yes, test subjects. Boom, nuclear, whatever. He was there in this moment. Cool, Forrest Gump it. Let's go. And then he gets in the fridge and then it's like, blows it literally miles away and he's perfectly fine, unharmed. It makes no sense. Like, it truly, as an idea, makes no sense. But I'm like, give me this nonsensical thing over this relatively realistic destruction of any non-white person. You know what I mean? I take this slapstick cartoonish bullshit scenario trash over everything else this franchise is about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, okay. So that was the point of the movie, like, when I first watched it, where I was like, okay, my brain's off. Like, you know, and then I was just like, sure, whatever you're gonna do, like, let's like, see it.
Let me out. Yeah, okay, just do cool. It and let me go home.
Yeah, I was like, okay, cool. Maybe we're not gonna destroy entire cultures. And instead of, like, changing, like, the narrative a little bit and how they approach, like, a character like Indiana Jones and all of that, they not only doubled down on everything that he stands for and everything that he does, but because it's, like, you know, 20 years later, he's even better at destroying fucking everything. And we find out that not only did he knock up Marion, but he left her like a week before the wedding. He's a daddy's boy and he doesn't go by Indy anymore. He goes by Henry. And I'm like, okay, like, what the, that's fucking stupid. And then, like, the whole thing is like, I'm old. Like, so many of these fucking lines are, oh, I can't do this like I used to. I'm old. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, you're complaining about being old, but you're still, like, being dragged by this fucking car and, like, jump up like it's fine. Like, so where's this coming from? And then he, like, in this one, they not only destroy a temple, they, like, 100% every fucking indigenous person that was at the temple that where the UFO and everything was 100% dead. 100,000% dead. Because not only did, like, the aliens left and then there's, like, all of the temple crumbling and everything, but then there's also a fucking flood. And there's also, like, this weird-ass tornado thing in all of this. We're white people.
Okay. I have a really interesting point to make about that exact scene. So, they show up into the kingdom of the Crystal Skull with the Crystal Skull as they're about to be killed by the native folk who are justifiably enraged by this absolute intrusion. They use the skull to keep them at bay as sort of like a safeguard because they can't get close to it. They're using what would understandably be an object of supreme divinity for this culture, right? They're using that to keep them at bay and using this object, this pillar of native divinity, for the sake of discovery. They're justifying it to say, like, okay, we're going to do this thing so we can stay safe, so we can go look at their stuff without their consent. So that's a whole thing, but that's what, I mean, Western colonization, that's the whole concept. That's the idea. It's taking the thing that they like, spinning it against them, using it as a weapon, killing them, taking their thing, saying, it's been ours the whole time and you'll never take it from us because it's ours. Nobody was here before. What do you mean? Native Americans who? Right? That's right. The entire concept of it. But then on top of that, the one person in the group who is a staunch capitalist, right, is the friend who's like a double, triple cross guy.
He was really boring.
He was, I mean, so boring. Like, also silly. Like, oh, the fun gag was that he was a triple agent. No. So he is leading the KGB there with the tracking devices. So the introduction of capitalism into this, on top of using native divinity as a weapon against their own people, the introduction of capitalism into the equation is what inevitably gets the entire populace killed.
I mean,
right?
That tracks.
Because, I mean, he is the symbol of capitalism in this. He talks about it. He's like openly talking about how, like, he has to do this because he gambled away his money and he has a problem and he can't come home until he gets his money, and everything's money, money, money. Every scene, he's the stereotypical like greedy guy who wants to get all the prizes and objects and all that stuff. He is the embodiment of capitalism. He'll sell his soul for a buck. It's this capital over everything mentality. He is the introduction of capitalism to this society, and thereby brings about its destruction because he leads the KGB there.
Okay, but I also want to understand why it is that Indy is so intent on believing him right away without ever having to prove himself, right? Just being like, oh, I'm a double agent. Oh, okay, whatever. Like, and he's clearly known him for a long time and doesn't know what a shitbag he is. Or, you know, like he pretends to not know what a shitbag he is, right? But to me, that furthers that Indy is just a fucking trash person, because like he was doing that whole like, oh, well, he's a good guy, I know him, right? Like that whole fucking trope where it's like, just because you know a person or like this person exists around you, like you are making excuses for them, and
yeah.
Like I hated that character so bad. I'm mad at just like, ugh. None
of the characters in this movie were good. I want to like be like, I didn't like any of them. No. I didn't like how they brought Marion back. I didn't like how she was like, I'm going to complain for just a moment about how you were bad, but then I'm going to fall right back in love with you because you're so irresistible. Fuck that.
Let's get married.
Bullshit. And their whole bullshit. Yeah, let's get married at the end. Everything's right with the world.
Also, I know you left me at the altar. You left me at the altar, but I named our son after you. Like, yeah. To me, Marion felt like a character where like she was like trying to live her life in spite of Indy, but not because she like, was like, whatever, I don't need you, but as a way to get him back, which I fucking hate. Like, so she named the kid after him, and then later on it's like, oh, well, it's my kid. Oh, okay. And then suddenly he's a family man, and then suddenly he cares. It's like that whole shitty thing of like, let's have a baby and we'll stay together, like it's yeah, the whole time, like, why? Like, I don't. And then at the end, like, so she's raised this fucking kid for 21 years. At the end, when they get married, the son is on Indy's side, not on her side. There's fucking nobody there for her. And it's just like, oh, well, cause boys, there's that like, father-son thing. Like, she isn't a character in this. She's just like there to be like, to give Indy a reason to, she's there to give him a kid. That's all she's there for. Well,
it also reiterates the sort of egregious acceptance of poor, like, masculine behavior. So, like, already we're seeing Mutt even before we don't know it's his son, which is very clear it is, like, from the get-go, pretty much. But when they're in the diner, he's, like, stealing the beer and dipping his fucking comb in the guy's drink and, like, just being an obnoxious piece of shit. Like, he sucks.
Yeah.
I hate Mutt. He's such a bad character and such a shitty person. But the whole idea with his character was to kind of juxtapose this notion of old versus young. It's a father and son. You're seeing sort of an older man, a father figure, looking at this character being like, why is he being so shitty? Like, whatever. Trying to justify the behavior of this shitty guy on his age, trying to justify and be like, oh, well, he's too young to know any better. That's just his actions. Where was that sentiment when you're trying to justify this 27-year-old fucking a 15-year-old in the first one? She's old enough to know. Yeah, this 21-year-old's old enough to know not to fucking dip his comb in a fucking soda. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, especially
like,
because
it's that double standard. The stories are bad. And I think they're written by bad people.
Yes, I agree. But like Junior, like, or, whatever, he's only there to ask the question why. Like, he doesn't know how to do anything for himself. He's just, why? I'm a bad boy. Why? Wait, why? What about this? Like, so he's there so Indy explains the plot. And that was really shitty. And I mean, like, his whole character is fucking shitty. But like, this whole film felt super, super, super boomery to me because, like, again, like, there's so many lines about how old Indy is, right? And then, like, there's, like, that other line of, like, we've reached the age where life stops giving you things and starts taking them away. It's like, okay, yeah, look, Netflix is going to be in the Oscars. Fuck off, right? Like, yeah. Things change. It's okay. But yeah, like the whole thing was like talking down to Mutt, and then like, oh well, you don't go to school, like that's fine, whatever. And then you're my son, you're going to school, fuck you, blah 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 blah. Like it just was the biggest amount of boomer vibes that I've seen in a film in such a long time that not only was it off-putting, like, I mean, this whole movie was off-putting, but it was just kind of like, okay, grandpa, like.
Yeah. And like, not because generally, like, folks who are older, like, not everybody is like that, but to some degree, there is a level of like, I do want to preface this. I've said this before, the concept of like not all media is for you. Maybe this is one of those instances, this story is just not for me. I mean, granted, I don't think it's for anybody because I think it's poorly written and I think it portrays anybody who's not cis white male in a bad light and excuses all of the actions of those characters. However, this movie is exactly what you said. It's such an uncreative, unthought-provoking, diary-driven narrative of the folks who made this movie. It's very much like a little love letter to the idea of being 50. Like the concept of we've gotten older and we can't get away with the things that like so there. But in that same turn, it's kind of like allowing. But like when he says like they were archaeologists, it kind of forgives everything that he's done. They're trying to forgive all of the sins of the past these characters have gone through by saying, well, we're older and, you know, that's just life and life just happens. No, life doesn't just happen. You were a young piece of shit who got people killed. Fuck you.
You made choices.
You made choices just like these other people are making choices. And you're trying to excuse behavior because of age, which is bullshit. Like, fuck, like, sure. These characters are young. Mutt is young. However, that double standard idea of a 15-year-old girl is supposed to act like or like have the cognizance and wherewithal of a 30-year-old and make those consensual choices, whereas this 21-year-old boy is being sloppy and silly. But it's like, oh, well, he's young, so he can do like these are still choices. There are still obvious moments of growth, obvious levels of experience that you engage with as you get older and you change. Everybody's constantly changing. People in their 50s are constantly changing. People in their teens to 20s are like nobody stays the same forever. There's constant change with change comes growth. I don't know. Like there's a level of just when you learn things, when you know better, you do better. And when you learn about shit, you grow and change. And I don't think that Indiana Jones changed at all. He didn't grow.
Think he did either.
He didn't listen to anything. He didn't do anything. So to me, instead of allowing and being like, I've changed, which would have been a better story, make an Indiana Jones who's learned from the shitty things he did as a kid and make that the narrative progress. You can still add the element of like, life has stopped giving us things, whatever that fucking means. And we're growing and you know what? We're getting older. That's a fine sentiment for this narrative. Sure. Add the element of reconciling with all of your past with not just failures, but the misdeeds. That would be way more interesting than just excusing them as entirely without acknowledging their badness, which this movie does. It's just excusing every bad element that he's ever done in a few very snarky, very poorly written words.
Which, like, to me felt even more cheap because, like, the whole movie before this, Last Crusade, was a father-son story. It was him reconciling his life with his dad and why his dad wasn't there and blah, 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 right? Yeah. So because he was able to reconcile that and, you know, and to figure stuff out, which daddy and son are basically the same person, and yes, dad puts down Indian stuff like that. But like, you think, like, especially after going through something like that, he would have learned, but he didn't, you know? No. And so instead, he's just continuing, like, this cycle of toxic masculinity. And rather than having a conversation with his son about, like, dude, that's stupid. Like, or, hey, you fucked up. Or like, hey, that's actually not cool. You should not do that, you know?
Yeah.
He just kind of, like, is like, oh, God, millennials, right? Like, and I hated that so much because this could have been such a better movie if Indy like was a better person or if he had any sort of character growth throughout this whole series, right? But instead of going that route, they just decided that they weren't going to. And then their way of like, you know, reconciling with Marion was, oh, well, they get married in the end. I mean, sure, he left her at the altar and he gave her a kid and she like, you know, had all this stuff and he like, you know, forced himself on her when she was 15, but they get married in the end. So it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, kids. Like they chose to sidestep everything and sidestep every like plot point that they had built up in like previous movies that could have been a really great point for character development. And I think that is one of the shittiest things about this is like the whole last movie was about you and your daddy. Like, come on. Come on.
Yeah, because again, what apart from that, aren't you just telling the exact same story except the roles are reversed? You've changed nothing about this conversation. There's been no growth. If you in this narrative even dropped in one scene where Indiana Jones even recognizes any level of empathy, you would have had growth. You would have had to confront. You literally would have had to confront all of these things, and that opens up the door to confronting all of these moments and reconciling with the badness that he has created. One level of empathy. If you did that, you had to open the door, and they didn't want to open the door. And it would have made a better movie. It would have made a way more interesting movie. Like, not to say that he's redeemable in any sort of way, but like, fuck, if we just had even just a shred of like, man, I've done bad things. Like, even just that line right there, boom, line reading. I've done bad things. If he said that, there's at least a level of humane activity in his brain, like a level of just like an acknowledgement of reality, a cognizant effort to recognize what is currently happening and who he is and how he exists in this world. But they doubled down. He doesn't care.
I want to know why Indy can't just be nice to people. Why he can't like say, hey, thanks. Like, you know, hey, thanks for saving my life. Hey, thanks for the assist. Instead of saying, don't ever do that again. And that's like another shitty toxic masculinity thing, right? Like, you know, we both know that I just saved your ass, and instead of like acknowledging that, you know, you're just gonna be mad at me for putting myself out there to save you because I care about you, you fucking asshole.
You big baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I will argue I do like that they brought Marion back. I love that Mutt was the son because it created a conflict. But I think this story was bad because in any sort of narrative structure, there's an element of returning having changed. Indiana Jones constantly returns having not changed for shit. Nothing about him has changed. There's not an element of him that's changed. Not even like if there is even an ounce of change, they snuff it out with a trashy masculine retort that just recontextualizes his place in this world and resolidifies how he's a bad person. So I was like introducing the son is such a like a whoa, and they've been friends. Whoa, that's crazy. Like, how are they going to react? How is he going to react to this? And then Marion being there, being like, I was still in love with you. Whoa, that's a lot. How is he going to react to this? Nothing happens.
In a very toxic masculinity sort of response.
Yeah, and nothing happens. And in response to nothing happening, all of the other characters are like, wow, Indy, good for you. But he didn't do anything. Nothing changed. He did not change, and the world did not change with him. Nothing has changed in these moments, except these characters are now just reacting as if he's resolved his stuff, as if he's changed in some way. Like, no. The idea that any of this structurally makes any sense is so elusive. Like, it just seems so wrong. I'm like, he's still bad. Why are you reacting as if he's good now? What?
Well, yeah. And so a point I think that drives home how like the rigidity of his character and how resistant he is to change and growth.
Yeah.
This is the fourth movie. So we've had 3 other movies where he has seen supernatural bullshit. He has like, you know, like the impossible things have happened. These like unspeakable wild things, right? But he's still, when they're like, oh yeah, and he found this lost city and he did this and it was aliens or whatever. Like at every point, he's like, no, that's not possible. No, that's just a story. When he himself has like literally like drank from the cup of Jesus or whatever, right? Or like, and so after all of this supernatural stuff he has experienced, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I never had that experience, so that doesn't exist, or your feelings are invalid, or I don't believe you, right? This is a fucker that has experienced these things, that has been there, done that, so to speak, right? And he is still on the side of, no, that doesn't exist.
Yeah. He's bad. I mean, he's a bad guy. He's Billie Eilish's bad guy. You know what I mean? Like... He's the bad guy, duh. Just at the end of it all. Like, it's so fascinating to me that this is like one of the sort of big old heroes of, that people like. Like, I don't understand. I don't get it. I mean, I do get it. I get it because I know where we live and I know the system. I know what we're taught. I know what's expected. I know who's in power. Like, I know all of these things. And to that degree, I can say, wow, what a perfect hero. But it just blows, it really does blow my mind that, like, fuck, man, Indiana Jones really fucking sucks. Like, as a movie, it sucks. And the character, it sucks, man. It's just bad. Like, it's,
yeah.
Dude, have people seen these movies?
But now they're talking about
watch?
They're making number 5. Number 5 is in pre-production. So,
wow.
Like, rather than telling new stories and talking about stuff or, like, you know, growing beyond, they are, again, I'm going to say it right now, they're just going to double down on all the shit that sucks about this. And there's going to be 80 more jokes or lines about being old because Harrison Ford is like 80 years old now or something, right? Like, it's going to be bad.
Can I tell you what I loved about this movie?
Sure.
Cate Blanchett.
I love her.
I also love Cate Blanchett. And I think apart from her it's not often. I don't want to like deaden her
bad
accent. I kind of loved it. Was it not the best? Sure. But it also felt very off-world to me. Just because it was kind of silly and kind of bad, I was kind of like, oh, is she a spy? Is she pretending to be KGB and she's a spy from somewhere else? Like, I want to know that story. But also that wig did so much work. Oh my goodness, that wig carried this film. Cate Blanchett's wig carried the entirety of this movie.
Shout out to her wig, because that shit was so... That line was even insane. It was so good. I also love the ants. Big fan of the ants. Such a cool sequence. So fun. Really disgusting. Big mummy vibes, which I am absolutely, completely all about. What else did I like about this movie? I like the sword fight on the cars. The sword fight was gorgeous. It was so fun. Again, the non-exploitative action sequences were fun. And all that stupid shit at the camp where like Oxley has been overtaken by the power of the crystal skull and he's kind of like he's lost his own personal cognizance. He's lost recognition of his own self because he's so taken by this power. And like the whole notion of him doing like this hand thing and he's like, give me a piece of paper. I was like, yes. Oh my God. That's so silly. Yeah, that was cute. I like that.
I love it. It's like big National Treasure energy. I'm like, yeah. Yes! Oh my God.
Just, okay, National Treasure is a better movie.
National Treasure is a way better movie. Okay, I'm going to be controversial brave. National Treasure 2 is a better movie than Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I 100% agree with you. 100%.
And that's National Treasure 2, people. That's the second one. Okay, for real, seriously though, what do you think National Treasure 3 is going to be about? I'm saying hacking.
Ooh.
It's online secrets.
I'm gonna say that it's gonna be in space.
You know what? That's a good one. But what treasures are in space? Moon landing.
Intergalactic treasure.
Okay, here's the thing. Here's what it is, because National Treasure loves a good American conspiracy. It is him finding evidence that the moon landing was fake on the on the space station. He finds like the reel or whatever, like the Kubrick reel. It says like Kubrick on it with the date of the moon landing, and it's just like, oh, here it is. Oh my god! That's what I want. If anybody who writes movies is out there and is hearing this, please write it. Please write this. Fuck, I want it. I want this so bad. Can you imagine, like, truly, because, like, Indiana Jones fucking sucks. Can you imagine National Treasure 3, though? What a treat.
Oh, yeah, I can.
What an absolute...
Well, because it's so silly. It's so fun.
See, that's the level of adventure that, like, you can be adventurous and still be relatively unproblematic. I mean... Going back and watching that,
we'll have to watch it. Yeah.
I've watched both of them recently, and there's some stuff in there that I'm like, man, that's, but way less problematic than Indiana Jones, and that shit's both Adventure City. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
yes, you can be adventurous without denigrating, exoticizing, and I guess just dehumanizing entire populations. Like, it's possible, y'all.
For sure.
Like. It's totally possible.
Okay, just one more quick side note on Cate Blanchett's character. So her character just knew things, right? Was psychic or whatever. Okay, like, you know, it's like a hyper version of like women's intuition is kind of like, you know, okay, fine, psychic, whatever. I don't know. But then, like, the end, like, and all she wants to do, she just wants to know everything. She just wants knowledge. That's what she wants. She wants to, like, you know, go off and do her thing. But, like, knowing things, because, like, clearly Marion is not capable of saving herself, or, you know, she's not, I mean, I guess she's kind of smart or whatever. She's just kind of there to get Indy in this whole thing, right? But, like, what in the end, like, does Kate in is that she wants to know things, and knowledge kills her or, like, dismantles her because it's bad for women to know things. Like, I mean, with all of the other toxic masculinity, like, bullshit that they were peddling, I was like, cool, of course this time the main face of the bad people is a woman who knows things without ever, like, before anybody else. So, like, that's like an extension of women's intuition. And then her downfall is going to be, or the bad thing is her knowing things, or her ambition, her wanting to have knowledge.
That's fucking sick. Oh my God. I didn't get that at all, but you're spot on. That's exactly it. That's exactly the fucking point of that character. No shit. That sucks, man. Fuck these people. That's so funny.
I know, because, like, she's such a good actor, and her wig was so good. And,
the character was great. I loved her character, but you're totally right. That's exactly why she was there. She wanted to be more knowledgeable and gave Indiana Jones a run for his money in every fucking moment.
And also wasn't tied down to a man, right? Yes. Like Marion.
And that made her bad.
Marion was there to reinstill that, you know, women should be mothers, women should be married, and yeah. So Marion
Jess,
was, yes.
This movie is arguing that female autonomy is their own personal downfall.
Yeah.
In that last scene when she's looking into the alien's eyes, and, like, what are her last words? She says,
like, I want to know.
I want to know everything. I want to know. Mm-hmm. And then at a certain point, she says, I don't want to know anymore. Stop. Too much information. What? Okay. Fuck that shit.
Yup.
She got too smart, so she died.
Her
women
poor
out there
brain can't handle it. Oh
women
my
and
gosh.
Women and femfolk alike. Don't learn too much, because you might die.
It's bad for you to know things, okay? Just trust us.
Fucking trash.
Trust the men. Yeah.
Aliens are cool. This movie sucks.
Yeah, I'm fucking done with this movie.
So am I. Fuck Indiana Jones. Man, fuck this movie.
So we just talked about Raiders of the Lost Ark and Crystal Skull, and how these movies promote toxic masculinity, and also
Yes.
hate women. So, Eric,
Yes.
for Raiders, who was it for?
Oh, I mean, default answer. I'm gonna choose cis het white men for 1,000.
Ooh, and you got today's Daily Double, because it's both of those movies.
Because it's also the patriarchy. Shout out. Yeah. So this movie was for nobody other than them, because it's for all the reasons we discussed. Cis het white men. End of story. Who do you think it was for?
Oh, yeah, 100% it was for them. So, like, when I was reading, like, going through my notes and everything, and, like, right after, like, we were talking, because Danny and David also watched it with me, I was like, for Marion, they literally, okay, so, you know how we already discussed, they made Indiana Jones, like, the man's man, this is who you should be, this is what you should want, you know, all of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, their role model. They made that toxic masculinity's wet dream, right? They did the same thing to Marion. And they forced her into that box of, like, she's tough, but she's not tough enough to where she could save herself. She's still helpless and stuff like that, but she can drink you under the table. And also, she'll kiss your boo-boos. And she has spunk, so she'll fight with you because that's fun. But, like, then she'll also, like, forgive you because, like, you're actually, like, you know, you save her and it's fine. You don't ever have to apologize because he never fucking apologizes throughout any of these movies, in case you didn't know this. So I'm going to say this is Steven Spielberg and George Lucas's combined wet dream. And that's a world that I don't want to live in and I don't want to ever visit again.
I mean, I said this off pod, but I said the only good thing about this franchise was the ride. But honestly, when I ride it next time, I'm going to have to look at it in a whole nother light. I'm going to be like, yeah, honestly, that snake is a sign of homophobia. I'm so sorry. It's lunging at me and we're supposed to be afraid of it. And it's like,
Okay. When,
so silly.
When COVID is not a thing anymore, right? And when I come visit you in Southern California, we should go to Disneyland and we should ride the rides that of movies and films and stuff that we've reviewed. And we should have a bonus episode where we critique the rides from a feminist and queer perspective.
I'm so ready for that. Because I'll like, I mean, those rides are so immersive. I'm going to critique the fucking queue.
Oh, I'm so ready.
Shit.
Yeah.
It's going to be a whole experience. We're critiquing the fences. We're critiquing the fucking trees. We're going to critique it all. I don't give a shit.
Yes, I'm fucking ready. All right. So, Eric, did you like Raiders of the Lost Ark?
No, I did not.
Is that going to be a hard pass for you?
Well, okay. Let me compose myself before I make such a bold statement. Yeah, it's going to be a big hard pass for me. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is a canonically terrible film. I hate it. I really don't like that movie. It's not a good movie. Literally, the Nazis are only there to make Indiana Jones look less bad because he's a piece of shit, doing some equally awful, shitty things. He exemplifies Nazi behavior, but because there's literal Nazis near him, it makes him look less bad. I'm like, go fuck yourself. Go fuck this whole movie. Like, what trash?
I agree. I also did not like this movie, and I was very surprised. I was like, all right, cool. Like, you know, I've seen these before. Like, they're not, like, my favorite. It's not The Last Crusade, which was my favorite, like I already mentioned. But, like, realizing so early in, like, you know, this just throwaway dialogue that they fucking had, that she was 15, and realizing all of the things that, all of the implications of that, like, really set the tone for... It left a bad taste in my mouth that didn't go away and just kind of got worse as the film kept going on.
They doubled, triple, quadrupled down on their badness. Anytime there was a moment of like unexceeding bad, like the highest level of like, man, that's fucking gross, they would be like, oh, you think that's bad? Get ready, we're going further. And then they'd get there and you're like, why and how? And they're like, oh, this is bad? Oh, get ready. And you're like, what? Who are you doing this for? Why are we doing this?
And then to realize that, like, you know, reading some of the behind the scenes stuff, like, that it was like that on and off screen, that, like, the actor that played Marion, I'm sorry, I forget her name, but she had all of this backstory, and she was like, cool, I think it'd be great if they were equal partners in this quest for the Ark and all of that. I'm like, yeah, awesome. This is why you need diversity in writing rooms. And this is like, and just like, then to have them be like, no, and to have her keep pushing it, and to have them just be like, no. But meanwhile, Harrison Ford and everything that he wanted was like, so for instance, you know, we already talked about that, like, he brought a gun to a sword fight thing, right? So apparently the entire cast and crew, except for Steven Spielberg, got dysentery while they were filming, and like got super fucking sick. So Harrison Ford and the reason that Spielberg did not get dysentery was because he didn't eat any of the local food. He had brought like canned foods and stuff like that. So everybody else got dysentery, right? And so Harrison Ford had like 103-degree fever while they were filming that, and was just tired and fucking done. And so like that whole scene was supposed to be like with the whip and the sword and the thing and it was supposed to be like a big, giant, long fight scene. The dude like that he shot spent weeks training for this one scene, and he was just so over it that he was just like, fuck it, boom, and shot him, right? And then they were like, that's perfect, that's what we're doing, we're keeping it, right? And that is so representative of this movie and what it was doing, like, and what it was trying to show. It's like, yeah, of course, that absolutely tracks, absolutely 100%.
I didn't think that I could like the movie less, and you got me even lower. How fun.
Mwah. Mwah. I got you.
Wow. Yeah, man. Fuck this.
How about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Was it new, interesting, or the same? Progressive and regressive? Has it evolved with today's ideals?
No, and no. It's the exact same fucking movie. 20 years later, no growth, no change. Nothing new except aliens, and that is the only part about it that I like. JK, Kate Blanchett's wig is also great. Obviously, we've talked about it, but no, it did none of those things. It literally did none of those. It's the same fucking bullshit shit characters with new shit characters who are equally as shitty and bad. It's just bad. Yeah. What do you think?
Was it new? Absolutely not. Was it interesting? No. Nope. Did it have promise? Sure. But it wasn't. Was it the same? Yes. I'm going to say it was completely regressive. Okay. I'm going to say it did evolve, but for boomers, because this was a very anti-millennial, anti-women, anti-anything that isn't an old person movie. This is for boomers. This is who I guess that's the next question. But that's how it evolved. It evolved in a very boomer fashion.
Yeah. So moving on to who is it for, I will fully agree with you that I do think that it was for the concept in popular culture that we attribute with the baby boomer generation. So I do think that there is a generalized understanding of stubbornness and an unrelinquishing stalwart nature with new ideas and sort of expanding horizons that a lot of baby boomers have. So I think in that way it is for boomers, but I think it's really for people who don't want to change. In like a greater way, I think it's for people who are like so set in their ways. Their understanding of the world from 30 years ago is the only way the world exists. Mm-hmm. Nothing's changed because nothing's changed for them in their lives, and they're unwilling to change with it.
So this is like a justification, and you are justified.
And it's a confirmation bias for their own life choices, and this movie just solidifies that understanding of what the world is to them and why they don't need to change and why they don't need to understand anything more than what they currently understand. That is to say, I do think it is for bad people because I equate that kind of a lifestyle with badness.
Agreed. Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Great.
Like in the same way. Ooh, I got it. This is very meta. Are you ready? So in the same way that the aliens being archaeologists was for Indy and to, like, you know, justify all of the choices and all of the things he's done with his life, this movie was that for people that are exactly like you just described. Are like, yeah, see, it's
perfect.
Fine.
Cut, print. That's exactly who this movie was for.
Did you like it?
Oh my, no. No. I mean, did I like it more than the first one? Yes. Did I hate them both? Yes. Yeah. Did you like it?
Fuck no. I hated it the first time and I hated it this time. I hate it even more.
Yeah.
I hate both of these movies even more after looking at it through the lens that we do. You know, I had never looked at it through a feminist lens and I was like, fuck that. And then when you were saying everything about, like, you know, the homophobic, like, pieces to this too, I was just like, wow, this movie is even more trash. Like, and
it's really bad.
Like, the more that we get into this, I just continue to, like, qualify. I think I like this. It's been a minute, you know, because, like, I had seen one of these movies, like, couple years ago, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is fine. Yeah. You know, like, our, like, dumb fun whatever. But yeah, man, this was rough and I don't ever want to watch that again.
Trash media.
But not like the good trash media.
No, it's the bad trash media.
Yeah.
What an absolute disaster.
Yeah, we're done with that. I think next week we've decided, or not next week, next episode.
Are we doing Jingle All the Way?
We're going to do Jingle All the Way because
oh my God.
Danny told us while he was editing the last podcast, he's like, look, you guys said that there wasn't a Jingle All the Way remake, but there absolutely was, and it stars Larry the Cable Guy, and we're going to do it.
I'm so scared. Honestly, though, it's going to be really funny if Jingle All the Way 2 is better than both of the Indiana Jones movies.
Oh,
it's going to be really funny.
The bar is not high.
They could do it. They could go all the way. They could jingle all the way into our hearts with that franchise. If they wanted to, you know, we're open to
we'll
it.
See. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. We'll see.
So, all right. Let us know what you thought. If you agree or disagree with us on Indiana Jones, dude, let us know. I kind of want to hear other people's
online.
Takes. Yeah,
on
Instagram.
Online.
Instagram.
Tell us why you love or hate us. There is no in between. And if you hate us, it's because you are not us. So shout out to your self-esteem, JKLOL. But no, seriously, if you want to talk about it, let's talk. I mean, you have had friends, and I have also had friends who have reached out after listening and been like, I don't necessarily agree with you. I want to talk about it. I'd be like, yeah, okay, great. Let's
100%.
I would love to go over it. I want to hear what you have to say about this. So it's fun. It's fun for us. I love doing this. So if you want to talk to me about any of this, any of the opinion-based trash I've espoused on this media platform, honestly, just go ahead and shout out and be like, I want to yell at you. And I'll be like, yeah, let's do it.
I think our Instagram is NOTstalgia.pod. Is that right?
Yes. NOTstalgia.pod.
Follow us there. We love you. Also, rate and review us, please. And tell your friends.
Yeah.
And make your boomer parents listen to us. No, I'm just kidding. Write into us at nostalgiapodcast@gmail.com with questions or concerns. We love you so much. Thank you, Danny, for editing our podcast. And thank you, Eric, for being great.
Thank you, Jess, for also being great. I love and miss you.
I love and miss you too. And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye.
Bye now. Indiana Jones sucks.